just think they can go in and have it for free, you know. But in truth, as Councillor Kenny says, the taxpayers are paying for the electricity and all of that.
It's a discussion that we want to contribute to the community. So are we doing that or are we not?
In R, because it would go through in F or C&T, the people who are looking at it, we're just making the decisions about what we would charge going forward.
About access to a new email so that we can actually use our app for IBABs. I find it very frustrating that I have to go through, I go through Meeting Green or whatever it's called. And
I have to go through that as well.
I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time.
It was the .gov.uk,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah. And there were issues with that. Some members, you explain it.
Yes, so there are some complications. So we're not 100% sure giving out .gov.uk domain email addresses will actually solve that problem. You may still have to do exactly the same thing. The downside to a .gov.uk domain is members are going to be very restricted on what you're allowed to use that for, because it's not supposed to be political, it's supposed to be council run. So yeah, but we've held off to make sure we've got the policies, procedures and training ready for the new council. And the plan is for the new council to have all of their domain names on .gov.uk. In the meantime, we're trying to make sure that IBABS is working as it should. And what I know Will has said is if there's still issues, please keep reporting those, because we've spoken to IBABS and they're saying that pretty much all of these issues aren't issues. They're not showing up as problems. So until we keep reporting them, and Will is doing a good job doing that, they won't spend time looking at the issue. So if you're still having problems with the app, please still report it. Yeah, it's very important that you do that. So we've got the data.
Sorry. So, I mean, I don't have that issue with my laptop, and I'm not sure what the fancy IT reason for that is. But are we looking at alternate software other than IBABS? You know, if they're not going to listen, then we just, you know, speak with our wallets, right?
Yes, we are.
IBABS is an excellent system. And it was working perfectly until suddenly it went. And yes, we can manage Meeting Green, but it's more cumbersome.
Six, which is the budget planning setting, so I'll hand you over to
shall I wait?
Councillor Creek disrupting the meeting.
Yeah, so as I'm sure you're all aware, we had a bit of an issue with the server, which has slightly delayed everything. So I met with Councillor North and just explained the situation, and we've kind of shuffled things, the bottom part of this agenda on, the timetable, to still try and hit the same deadlines with the latest being the January if we need to go forward that far. But unfortunately I wasn't able to provide the data that you needed in time for your September meetings because I was a month behind essentially. So hopefully it's just for clarification that this is the new plan now. So the proposed budget's first stage for discussion will go to the committee meetings in October, and then that will then go to the GNR committee via email. because that will impact what the total budget is, and then it will be up to this committee to give some feedback to the other committees to decide whether there needs to be any adjustments, which I think there normally is, and then for GNR to consider that before setting the budget. So, but it gives a chance for GNR and individual committees to properly discuss their budgets.
An opportunity in October to input to the budgets as well, or in the committee?
Yep, so at the committee meetings in October, that's when your budgets will be looked at.
Yeah, that doesn't, sorry, that wasn't, maybe I wasn't clear. To input potential thing, maybe essentially maybe it's a matter of going to the officer and now and suggesting that things get costed at least and put on for the committee to then consider.
So if you have something specific that the department manager wasn't aware of, then maybe it's worth having that conversation. But equally at that meeting, if it wasn't something, depends how large a project as such it might be, you could bring it up in that meeting. So I will come
But we want the costings by October to stick to this timetable, right? So kind of need to get on top of it now.
Can I just ask, have you got an example of
Yeah.
what you're trying
Yes, I mean, there's a few things we've been discussing a few years with Joe, and I'm not clear whether he knows that he should be bringing that costing to this meeting or not. So I can go back to him and clarify that and ask him to do that. But I'm just checking if, because I don't see sort of a process of us asking for certain things to be costed and brought to us. So I'll just go that way then.
Yeah, I was just going to sort of on what you were saying, Councillor Larson. So last year's budget setting process, certainly for ENF, and I seem to remember C&T, which have the two largest budgets, you know, other than GNR obviously, was a little chaotic, and it did sort of end up in us going through budgets line by line based on wish lists that the officers had brought. And I think in terms of a better way of delivering that this year, what would be useful, I think, is for the managers to come to the meetings with a clear understanding of what it's going to cost to deliver their service. So, for example, environment and facilities. So the environment team would come and say, well, actually, to manage all of our green spaces next year, it's going to cost X number of staff, X number of equipment that we need to replace or maintain, and then vehicles and other bits and pieces. Then rather than coming with what I'd really like to do this year is build 20 planters, and that's going to cost £5,000, and what I'd really like to do this year is this and that, because actually we've got a grants officer now, and some of the projects, like play parks, for example, we know that there is some work to be done at South Fistral. Well, actually, it would be better, rather than putting that into the budget, to go, well, actually, let's factor in some maintenance costs for the next 12 months, but also get the grants officer working on, looking for grants to upgrade that site when it's appropriate to do so. I just feel like it sort of turned into a massive wish list last year, and then all of a sudden we'd added a couple of £100,000 of additional capital expenditure onto the budget that we then ended up cutting anyway. And so it was sort of a bit of a circular thing, and so setting a strategic direction, how much is it going to cost to run that service next year, rather than a long list of wishes, I think is what I'm trying to say.
I'm actually kind of saying the opposite, I think, and I'm a bit confused, because when would we as a committee discuss which things we want to develop? Because we're a growing town, we're growing the work we're doing, and well, you don't want line by line on planters projects, I don't think, on this committee. So, but the ENF committee, it shouldn't just be decide with Joe on the side, and it needs to come to committee in ENF, is my understanding. And so, whilst that was a torturous process, I agree, and I'm not sort of trying to say we we don't try to update the process, certainly. But I do want to be clear on how do we bring projects to the committee, cost them, consider as a committee. Yes, to the ENF committee. Which ones we as a committee agree we want to fund or not. They're not just one person's pet project, the committee has agreed to do them.
So I suppose, sorry, do you mind if I suppose I would be minded to say, well, have we got projects that we want to roll out over the next 12 months, and have we costed those?
Yes, but my point is we need to come somewhere, and that's what I'm trying to figure out what timing that needs to be.
And can they be costed through potential grant funding moving forward rather than placing the burden on the taxpayer? So I think I'd be looking at all those options. Is there a small pilot project that we want to do, but actually we're going to pay for that out of an EMR for the first, year to see how that goes, and then add it as part of an ongoing budget process? There are a number of different ways of doing it, without kind of going blue sky thinking we want to build, I don't know, a massive garden by the train station, and that's going to be £100,000 on top of the precepts. Do you know what I mean?
It's not 100,000. And we've actually been discussing it for the 2 years that I've been on the committee, and I'm just trying to get clear on how I actually get it through the committee. And
That's what it is.
well, it is the planters at the railway station, which we had brought to budget, and then we went through that process last year where it was removed, and that's fine because we're being prudent on budget. But your point a second ago about EMR, is that not what we're actually discussing in the budget? That is the timing when we would discuss what gets used for EMR or not.
I think you're right. You need to if you want to do a project, you need to get it costed somehow. Exactly. And then you present it to the budget meeting.
Yes.
Now, so
I
there should, what you've asked is there an opportunity to present projects at the ENF committee budget meeting?
Yes, and I understand your point that perhaps as a committee we say, well, that one let's deal with in the grants process, but I think we need to do that as a committee, and we need to all see what the cost was and agree that that's what the committee is doing. So I'd rather we bring things to that budget meeting, and then we decide, okay, well, that one's not going to be agreed, and unfortunately that may be torturous, but there's 100 things that we deal with in ENF, so that's just how it works. Point was that the message to the officer had not necessarily been to bring them to that meeting, and that's why I was asking about the timing. So I'm telling the officer to bring them, and I'm just pointing out that we'll just have to go through that process as a committee.
All of the managers are told well in advance to cost up what their committee is wanting them to do, to put that in a report to that meeting. Everything that's in that report I put in the budget, so that it can be taken out if you don't want it, because it gives you a worst case scenario, if you like, rather than me sitting through a budget meeting and adding everything in and possibly making a mistake. It's easier to do it all in the initial stage and for you to remove things. And I appreciate it's tedious, but if you want that level of control, then you have to do the tedious role. It's equally easier to pop things in, and we did that last year. There were some things around C&T and youth grants. If I'm at the meeting, I've got all the information in front of me, I can pop it in because it's a committee decision, and I can give you all the knock-on effects of that. So that's there, and that's that meeting. But hopefully it would be ideal, I suppose, following the corporate plan that we'll have a set plan for the next 4 or 5 years, that each committee will be able to properly look at what projects they're running over that period, so they can be costed well in advance, and have a plan of what's being done, because that's important too.
6B, we've got the assertion review. Should we do them both together? One was done in 19th of June, another the 18th of September. I'm happy to propose. We've got a seconder. Councillor Thompson, all in favour? Councillor Larson? Yep. Yep, sorry.
To be picky, can we just lose the P on the surname on the
Oh,
first
no, I
sheet?
did tell
It is a
Levi,
very-
you need to go through, make sure it's no P, and there was somebody
Penis.
else, his name was wrong, so you have to reprimand him. So then, item 7, we're on to retrospective approvals. So you'll be aware that we've replaced a number of vehicles. 2 have already been replaced, and the 4x4 is on its way, so to speak. Isn't that correct? Yeah. So I'm happy to propose. We have a seconder, Councillor Thompson. All in favour? Thank you. Then item B is our preferred IT company, Cytec, and that's to support Will. I'm happy to propose. Seconder, Councillor Wright. All in favour? And our third is the out of hours provision, which we've been using Kestrel. I'm happy to propose that we continue that. It was a temporary measure, wasn't it? So I've got a seconder out there. Councillor Thompson, all in favour. Do you want to ask a question?
You only use them when you think members of the public might come in. So, for instance, tonight, had a member of the public wanted to get in, it'd have been as stuck as I was outside.
No, it wasn't that. I'll let the clerk explain what Kestrel came in.
Yes, so Kestrel are basically covering out-of-hours call-outs if the alarm goes off out at night times. That originally was a number of officers, but it tended to be me. So at 3 in the morning, a couple of occasions I've had to come out for basically a false alarm where there's been a faulty sensor. No, so it's purely out of hours, it's emergency call outs, it tends to be intruder alarm or fire alarm's gone off, and the call centre gets a message, and then they have to call one of us on the list, and we come out, and then we have to make sure that it's secure or the place isn't burning down. If none of us attend, then the call centre can at their discretion call out the fire brigade or the police. They have done that previously when we had some faulty alerts, and the fire brigade have now said that they're not prepared to come out, so they do need a 999 call to come out now. They won't just take the call centre's trigger. It particularly came to a head for the last few weeks because I went on holiday, and so obviously I wasn't available to be on call, and we've had a number of staff that are on paternity leave or not available to come out of hours. So what we've done is trialled having Kestrel. The benefit of Kestrel coming out is if they find damage, they can actually secure the building. Whereas if I was here, I would have to wait for a contractor to come out and do that. I'm not someone that can, fill in a hole in the wall or do anything manual in any way, shape or form that's going to last. I'll give it a go. So what we've done is trialled it, and the plan is, as part of the staff review, to identify, is this something we can do in-house going forwards? Or is this something that we should look to continue if it's more cost effective to do it this way? So it's purely a trial at the moment. It's working at the moment, but the staff review will determine if it continues or changes.
Somebody asked me the other day, because there's a big sign up on the Chester Road toilets saying Kestrel is looking at it, but they're not expecting it every day. Is that they're just on call out if something happens?
Yeah, so they're on call out for it, something that happens, but for the toilets, what we've done in the summer, the Kestrel guards will come and lock them of an evening, and that's purely because we've carried a number of vacancies for the cleaning staff, and so they're not able to flex enough time to lock them at the times that the town council's decided we're keeping the toilets open until. So we've had Kestrel or others over the year come out and lock them up every night, and then our team open them up first thing in the morning. So that is something that we do.
Weight A, the corporate plan. Sorry? Sorry. Didn't we? Did we? We first and seconded, didn't we? Yeah, all in favour? Thank you, everybody. We're now on to the corporate plan. As you can see, you've got a copy here, which you've probably all read. And obviously, we want to propose to take this to full council for them to adopt. Have you got it there, Councillor Kenny? Yeah. It took a long time to load. Yeah, mine did as well, actually.
And is this the version that takes into account the feedback process?
Yeah.
So effectively, everything that was produced by the external contractors is in here. What we've done is sent it to our designer to make it look a bit more welcoming for the public to read. And so everything that was in the original Word document, those 4 or 5 pages, is in here. We've just put a bit more colour to it.
Wrote the bullet saying ensure toilet accessibility. So that's a strategic aim. Maintain clean, safe and affordable public toilets and increase the number of signposts to them. Signposting, great. Yeah. Yeah, I was just double checking that it's aligned with. I mean, clean, safe and affordable. How much toilets cost, and I am a fan of us having public toilets. I'm just double checking that the strategic aim sort of aligns with everything else we've been discussing about the cost of running toilets, which if somebody can remember the amount. Given we're making a very strong public statement here, over 1,000 a day to run them. So I guess maybe the word affordable is the way that we're sort of balancing that as that. Because it's quite a strong public statement here.
Open.
Yeah, I think I take your point, Councillor Larson. I think we obviously spend £1,000 a day on toilets. That's a lot of money. We have a lot of toilets. As you know, I'm keen to try and reduce the cost of the toilet tax burden in terms of the toilets. I don't think that by reducing the cost of the toilets, that's at odds with what we're saying here in terms of making them accessible. I think there are many ways you can do that, by including contactless payments on some of our toilets. That's more than doubled the revenue on one of our toilets this summer, just by adding contactless, which may be a surprise to some. By adding contactless payments to the toilets at Narrowcliffe, we doubled our revenue this summer from them. So I guess what I'm saying is, by increasing the revenue, we've reduced the cost to the taxpayer, though the cost burden to the taxpayer of our toilets is high. And I do think that there are, there's some efficiencies that we can look at with the toilets, and I think I suggested before whether we needed every single toilet block door open every year, where we've got multiple doors throughout the winter when it's maybe a bit quieter. I think there's lots of ways we can look at it, but I don't think that is at odds with that statement that says that one of our aims is to have accessible toilets.
Yeah, I was just going to say on that, we haven't got a reference on here to becoming carbon neutral by 20, which we've got our document proposal. I thought that would just been a statement on here working towards carbon neutrality, because we have a document, don't we, that says about 20. Yeah, I was just thinking that would be working towards that on the environment page would be quite good, just to add that as a bullet point.
Were there some? Sorry.
Do that or?
So everything in here is what was sent to members and was agreed via email as the final objectives.
Okay.
If members want to add more, and I'm conscious I'm opening doors now. Obviously, full council hasn't adopted this yet, so it hasn't gone to full council. Obviously, we will have to send it to designers. There will be increased costs as a result of that, but we're not saying that's not impossible. If you have a very strong case, then of course we would be stupid not to add it.
Yeah, it's just something I noticed. I mean, if we're covering it by our other strategic document, then fair enough, it is there. It just seems that in a corporate plan, and we're putting the lottery bid in to do about, you know, public, and it just ties in with that. So it was just literally putting, and there's room for a bullet point. It's not like you need to create space or anything on the page. Yeah, it can. Oh, good grief. Can I come back to you on that one in a minute?
We will work towards climate neutrality.
Can we let Councillor Thompson speak? She said
So,
about the 20...
I think so. I mean, there's space underneath the. Oh, come on.
Yeah.
We've got arborvitae across our estate. Deliver safe opportunities and help clean beaches. So I'd put it on the green leaf where it says underneath deliver public education regarding the ecological benefits of our actions, then you bullet point, we're working hard to become carbon neutral by whatever that date is in our strategy. Is it 2030? Did we change it? I know it was set at 2030, but I didn't know if we'd extended it.
I think the document's actually currently up for review.
Okay. I mean, working towards carbon neutrality. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
I think everything within that environment section on the corporate plan talks around that, and so maybe a final bullet point that just a suggestion that says, you know, all of this with the aim of being carbon neutral. And I think that kind of wraps it up with a nice little bow.
I was just looking at the spacing of it. There isn't room at the end of the environment. Well, I suppose you could do. It comes after the end of help clean beaches. It just seemed that as the bottom of page 6, there's that room over the green leaf.
I think it can go, at the bottom of page 6. I don't have an issue with that particular statement going there. I think because all of that ultimately are pillars within that particular goal. So I think it actually alludes to it, and I understand the desire to have the statement in there. I mean, I'm probably not that I'm less passionate about carbon neutrality, clearly, but less passionate about the need for that statement. But if majority of us would like it there, then I think it absolutely sits. No.
Yeah.
I'm conscious, obviously, this was due to go on Wednesday to full council, but what we can do is just make a note that that's going to be added. So.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, and this is not an edit, do we have a planned strategy around this reduced use of single-use plastics? Is anyone able to brief on any how we're going about that?
So these were all bits of feedback that we received from ourselves, councillors, officers, members of the public. So I know that has been put in there because there is a passion to do that. I think it's then for the council. We've set the strategic direction, so then it's for the committees then to work out how they get towards that. And I should imagine that sits across a couple of different committees, to be honest. But yes, so if you've got a proposal for how we do that, then by all means bring it to the appropriate committee.
Curious what our scope for that. We're meaning it's not about our use as a town council. We're meaning how the town uses. I presume that's what. Well, that's.
I think what we have to remember is we all had the opportunity to feed into this. What we've tried to do with this corporate plan, because we've never done it before, we've had a whole spiel of line. We just want bullet points, and actually, as Councillor Creek had said, you've got your committees then who can push that forward. This is just saying this is what we as a council, this is what our corporate plan is going forward. From the corporate plan will come a staffing review, and it'll all be tied in, but we cannot, for every statement we put, we cannot say then how we're going to do it, because that's not the idea of the corporate plan.
Well, yeah, no, I guess it met. Most of the others are very obvious, and that was the first I'd heard of that one, so my apologies. I was just sort of asking if someone had an idea already, but I do take the point that it is an issue discussed by people. I'm sorry. Well, and it is an issue people in the town discuss a lot, so I understand now that you're saying. To your point, Councillor North, after full council, the proposal would then be that we sort of, there's some things here that sort of read a bit like a commitment from us, and whilst there's no time limit, which is good, and to your point, it's about the strategic review of the council and sort of how we work overall, we would then take each of those goals or aspirations and sort of can we delegate them, so to speak, eventually to, in the next 6 or 12 months to certain committees and things. I guess I'm just nervous that we commit to all these things and then we park it and nothing ever happens. So I'm just checking in that the purpose is that we would then work through this document and somewhere in a spreadsheet we track all of these points and we make sure that we're sort of doing our best. Yes, we clarify them.
So just for a point of clarity on the corporate plan, it does have a set of timescales on it. It's 2024 to 2028. It's a 4-year corporate plan. We have a corporate plan that ran out this May. You can normally find copies of it downstairs on the desk. Essentially, and I'm probably being slightly critical of the old corporate plan here, having had no input on it. So apologies to anyone that was involved. My reading of the old corporate plan is they took what the committees did and copied it into a corporate plan and said this is what we're going to do, whereas I think here what we've tried to do is go out to key stakeholders, members of the public, and say what is it you would like the council to do, and what we've done is we've factored that into 7 different pillars, and you can see the pillars along the bottom of page 3, so community, environment, young people, business, relationship and organisational development. Within those pillars are different pieces of strategic direction that then will inform any and all work that the council does over the next period between 2024 and 2028. And actually, I would be referring back to this because it's a live document. I'd be referring back to this document throughout that period of time, should any of us be lucky enough to be on the council at that point, to go, well, actually, does that sit within the strategic directions that we set in our corporate plan, or does it not? If it doesn't, then there's probably a strong argument for not doing it. So it's not that we need to solve all the answers today, it's that our key stakeholders and our public have said that these are the things that they want us to achieve, and that this is the document that we refer back to and pull out pieces of work that we'd like to do. So as an example, you might want to consider the impact of plastics on the town council, and by doing things like removing single-use plastic from our supply chain and showing that as an example of what you can do, that then hopefully has a wider effect on the town. And so the other really good example of that is solar panels, right? And the adoption of these sorts of things helps to make people realise that they are achievable. Sorry, I've sort of gone on a bit there.
Typo on page 4, the blue one, where it says explore the creation of a conservation order in order. I think you mean conservation area in order to preserve the architectural character. That's just a typo. Preserve town heritage. Explore the creation of a conservation
Blue page, top of it on the right.
page. Doesn't tell me what page I'm on.
Of a conservation, what was the word you used, Councillor?
Conservation area.
Doubled, haven't they?
Yes, it's an area in order to
Okay.
preserve. You can see how it happened.
Yes.
So we're trying to do a conservation order.
Area,
Okay.
which is a specific thing.
By that we don't mean a standard or a.
No, we mean a specific conservation area.
Yeah, delineated conservation area.
Yes, I guess I meant within that.
We're not naming it this evening.
No.
Can I
No,
just
my
say,
You
point-
mean conservation
can I just
areas.
say, the plan sets out what we as our town council are trying to achieve. It doesn't
Yes.
have to have all the answers.
No.
Otherwise, it become an unwieldy document that people wouldn't even look.
Sure.
And the one that's downstairs, and as Councillor Creek said, you know, I was here probably when that was done and didn't even realise, I knew Councillor Slade. And when we came to do this, one of our councillors didn't even know that it was sitting on the desk, and we pass them every time we come into a council meeting. There's a great pile of them. I don't know if anybody's ever picked one up. Yeah, but a lot of councillors didn't even know that's what they were. So, moving on, we're going to vote on this. Do we have to vote on putting in that little recommendation? So, do we vote on Councillor Thompson's input? Okay, so we're just proposing. Pardon? Typo.
So propose the parent document with the corrections, additions we've discussed tonight.
Yeah. So I'm proposing a seconder, Councillor Thompson. Sorry, did you want to propose it? No,
it's fine. I'll stick my hand in the oven.
to take to full council for them to adopt. Thank you. What time is it? 9. So item 9 is strategically managed town council owned properties and assets. I'll allow the clerk just to explain that briefly.
Get to my quorum.
Yeah, so a couple of discussions with members outside of meetings is around particularly the Killicourt units. They do take a bit of time, part of the legal process of occupying those units. And in the meantime, it was thought if the officers had flexibility to lease them out on a licence or some other flexible basis on a day or weekly basis, you may find that the income generated from that is quite substantial over the year, particularly when you've got vacancies around just before Christmas or after Christmas, where you might not have any interest of someone going in until the spring or the summer. So they're going to hold off their lease negotiations, but you might want to fill them with pop-ups. So this was just an idea. I know that the Mayor has also discussed this with me, and it was felt that if we could do this, and if members are open to it, it would be another income generation
Sounds
asset.
like a good idea.
I was going to say, classic pop-up in like Truro you always get is the calendar shop, which literally is there for December and then disappears again. So, you know, yes, absolutely. Brilliant.
So just to say, the clerk and the officer will write clear guidelines that they can work within, and it won't be this business of they can do that and then they want to do something else. It's got to be really clear. We need to draw a line in the sand, because the units, you know, I've interviewed everybody who's gone into those units and everybody who didn't go into those units, and we're really clear when we interview them. It's an informal interview, really. It's a chat, you know, and as soon as the units are there, then they come back in, they want something else and something more. And, you know, we need to just say, you signed up to a lease, that's what the lease is, you know, move on. Because otherwise we've got loads of adaptations that people want to add to, and it wasn't the ethos for that area down there. So, who'd like to propose that? Oh, Councillor Thompson. Seconder, Councillor Wright, all in favour? Councillor Larson?
I'm sorry if I just missed something there. The proposal is to make the vacant units available for pop-ups. That's separate to the comment you just made about changes. Is that correct?
The proposal is to give the clerk and
Yes.
the officer the ability to set a policy for pop-ups.
For pop-ups, yeah. No, fine with that. Yes, sorry, support that. Thank you.
Item 10. Item
Oh, sorry.
10.
Need to work on our communication, because there's a little bit of confusion as to the steering group and things as to what that was for. I assume that was for the lottery bid, and I've only learnt out this evening that no, it's not. So I don't think, because that was something to do with the time team. So I'm a little bit confused.
We're just asking you to talk about the
Oh.
lottery bid, because that's
Okay.
the item. Sorry.
Okay, so it is to do with the lottery bid, because the call went out to go onto the steering group, and I assumed that was to do with the lottery bid in terms of the creation of the climate action. So the lottery bid is for engaging the public to change behaviour in terms of fighting in action against climate change. Kieran's, I thought, was going to do like a report for this meeting, or did we decide not to do that?
Yeah. So I think the gist of it is we're asking for permission to continue with setting up a climate action Nuki group. My understanding is that group will help determine a bid to the lottery fund, which is obviously time sensitive because the application deadline's December. We also, as part of this, would request permission to draw up and use Kieran's time to draw up a bid with that steering group or that climate action Nuki group, which within the deadline, which then gets circulated to members, ideally for the November GNR meeting, and that's where there'll be a report. If we miss that deadline, though, we may have at that meeting get approval to deal with this through delegated authority via email. So members will see the application before it goes in, and that's just to make sure the council's happy taking on any risk or what's being proposed, because it is at the minute slightly could go out of your hands if it's an external steering group. Which is making sure everything, all the safeguards are in place, and then to submit a bid by the deadline. So that's effectively what we're asking for.
So where I got confused is that somewhere, was you, Liz, that it's got it mixed up with the time team?
The town team.
Town team, sorry.
Right, so one of the pieces of work that needed doing in relation to this was about the steering group and the involvement of getting the right people on board and what their terms of reference might be, etc. And there has been a lot of discussion and toing and froing between other people that have done very similar things that have been very successful. The Nuki Town team offered to use some of their vitalisation fund to engage with, and they did a small tender exercise for a climate consultant, if you like, professional, that's done a lot of work that can help and support that group in forming their terms of reference, what they're really there to do, because and try and there was a list, I can give you the list of what that's trying to do. So anyway, Nuki Town team are using their funding to pay for this piece of work that will enable the steering group to get where they need to be and to create the vision and everything that they need to be able to put it into the funding bid. They're using their experience on putting in funding applications, specifically ones similar, to know what's most likely to get the money, if that makes, and steer the direction and help support that group make choices, is my understanding.
So I've missed out on all of this.
Right, okay.
On this decision, and so that's where I've got this confusion from, as to, because I thought we were going for the steering group, and I thought of all that, and the last time I spoken to Kieran was that I suggested that they referred back to Climate Action Group as a good source for helping with this, because that's their job, and it was a position I went for on that, but I wasn't selected on that. But they operate out of the University of Exeter down in Falmouth. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I've just been lost out of the loop, really. So as to what's going on. And
thank you, Anne, for the update, and thank you, Andy. So I was at the town team meeting where we discussed this, and I think the Climate Action Nuki Group, brilliant piece of work, and I'm hoping that we've got some really great engaged members of the public who have put their names forward. I'm sure you'll be able to update us on that at some point. 20, wow, look at that. I was also really encouraged by, is it public knowledge who that consultant is? Yeah.
Sorry, say that again. No, I don't know.
Okay, well I won't say, but really encouraged. I think as well as being able to support with the National Lottery bid, I think the reason that the town team were convinced enough to spend some of their money on this particular consultant to support this piece of work is that almost any and all grant applications that we put in for anything in Newquay, whether that be ours, the town team, or any other community group, will want to have some sort of climate slant on the application. And so this working group, the Climate Action Group, will be a key stakeholder in almost all grant applications that we put forward, I suspect. So that was their reasoning for wanting to support it.
I'm not quibbling with that, and I discussed that, and I discussed this with the town clerk, and I discussed this with Kieran as a plan forward. It's just that I've sort of just been recently missed out on terms of the role of the town team in this. That I've just been left behind somehow, because I've applied to be on the steering group, because I don't know if I'm going to be a councillor, and it wasn't made clear as to whether, if being a councillor, then I was already going to be automatically going to be a member of this or not. So I've applied to take an interest to be on the steering group. And the interesting thing, of course, is then if I'm like, no, you're not suitable. So, which will be then interesting in its own right. So this is where I've got confused, and because I put it on the, Councillor Larson, and you've done that as well. So I think then it's almost like it's taken its little own life of its own by the town team. And then suddenly I've got left behind somehow. Yeah, I've got no quibbles with that, and it's just it was just a lack of clarity and a little breakdown of communication somewhere, and I just got confused. Sorry.
Try to understand. We've got the urgent application, which our clerk was mentioning, over the next 6 weeks or something.
Well,
December.
It's the new year, but by the time we get it through,
Okay,
yes,
right.
It's like,
Realistically, yeah. And it sounds like we're also talking about a longer term climate. It sounded, Councillor Creek, like you were referencing wider and other grant applications.
Yeah.
Because well, I guess my point is that I'm sort of with Councillor Thompson, because I was the one who discovered the grant in the first place, and we just want to get that grant done for now. And yes, it's wonderful that a wider climate working group happens, and also this application does need community involvement. But we want to be very clear that what we're working on right now is this 8-week process, and getting that done, and then other things with the town team, that's fantastic. We should be aligning everything, but let's just get this done, essentially. I'm just trying to check we're all on the same page about that, basically.
I think this is this project. It is exactly what we needed. There was an element of support required by somebody with that climate action, and it was the Newquay town team who offered to pay for it. So that's pretty much where their extent. They've gone, we've got some funding, we can pay for that. They went and agreed, and that's really what it's just they're paying for something.
You get the grant, the town council will be the accountable body, will it?
And maybe if I could suggest possibly, I don't know if this is appropriate, but it feels like it is, because Councillor Thompson has handled this concept from the beginning, from day one, and to her point a moment ago, she's not sure if she's involved now. It would make sense to me if perhaps this committee appoints Councillor Thompson as the councillor who is responsible for shepherding this process over the next 2 months, because I think that's what you thought you were doing, and you have got the detail and the concepts in your head. Not just in your head, on paper as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, we've got a grants officer, and Kieran's doing all the work with that,
Yes.
and I'm fine with that. And I'm fine with the steering group, and I'm fine with everything. It's just that I just got left out and with the town team sort of thing, and being taken to a bigger scale. So but I don't know. I mean, I messaged Kieran that we need to catch up on this, because I was got a little
Would
confused.
anybody be interested to support that proposal that we...
So, let's just coming back to that. You're happy to support Kieran in the bid?
Yeah. I mean, it's a town council thing that they're doing that, and I'm still working with Kieran and things, and it's But if I don't get on the steering committee, it's sort of like. But then again, mine might not be deemed suitable for the steering committee. So then, then that's somebody else's issue. So, I'd, I'm happy to propose that.
And I'll second, and all in favour of that. Then a second item comes. Sorry, my red light's not on. Do you believe that the Climate Action Group should sit with ENF? Because that will be another proposal. Because it has to sit with the committee. Somebody has to have sort of oversight in a sense. We can't let because they'll be working with us.
Does ENF have the capacity?
Councillor Thompson's already doing the work, essentially, and you're sort of somewhat along the process.
I'm not in ENF. I suppose if it's like Nikki and Bloom and I'm sitting there as the representative in ENF, it'd be something else to report into. But I presume that Kieran would then be giving reports to ENF, wouldn't he? So I don't need to be involved in that. That's his job. I mean, ENF's got a large amount anyway. I presume he'll just be doing a report to it like any of the budget holder would be doing it, yeah? Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, to be honest with you, it was just a question. We've had 20 applications to the Newquay Climate Action Group, which is wonderful. What other membership is there of that? And has someone set some terms of reference for this or not? If I'm honest, I'm not even 100% sure what it came out of. I just assumed that you guys had that.
I've got the breakdown of how it's planned in terms of this quotation, if that might help you. I'll try, I'll probably read it wrong. It includes reviewing the Council's climate priorities and align them with the objectives of the Climate Action Steering Group, establish the criteria for selecting the members, ensuring diversity and representation of key climate stakeholders of the advisory group, advise the group on form formation and governance, so develop a framework for the governance and an operational structure, provide the strategic guidance on how the group should operate and its key roles and responsibilities, assist the council in the selection of the group members based upon the agreed criteria, finalise the document for the steering group's composition and preparing a formal establishment between the two, training, CPD, and equip the members with the knowledge and skills to drive it forward.
Brilliant. That sounds like you answered all those questions. So it sounds like it's all up for debate, and the consultant will put a recommendation in terms of who should be on that committee, in terms of the council, in terms of members of the public, etc. So,
In line with objectives. So, do we have those objectives somewhere?
Well, that's
The first line of it.
we have your new corporate plan.
Is that that doesn't seem like objectives for a climate working group, though. I think that's partly what the confusion is, that we're not really sure what the objectives are. That I think we're all agreed that we do want this to happen.
Consultant will know all that.
Okay. And I'll just come back, though, that we have this urgent process happening with an application due by December, a very big application. And then we have the second piece of work, which sounds like a much longer term piece of work based on what you've just described.
That is for that group. It's going to happen over the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Everything going to be finished by December, or are you going to have the Climate Action Group carrying on after December, which seems...
It feels, that certainly feels like a longer, exactly.
Can I suggest you don't, if you have, unless they've got two heads, when we started the Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group, we had 20 volunteers, absolutely great. They drop like flies, so I would hang on to them even if they're associate members or something, rather than saying we don't want you on the steering group, because you can guarantee that the enthusiasm will drop off.
So I'd make a suggestion then that if I am put forward then as a delegated councillor to put forward, then I could give support to that at ENF meetings as well, maybe for Kieran, because because this is going to be a group then sitting outside the council almost, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like Newquay and Bloom.
Like Newquay and Bloom, and it's not part of the town team. So
I think
it
it-
isn't, is it? Do they have a consultant? If they do have someone, right? Okay, brilliant.
When you say on what committee will it be put, what exactly is the committee's role with this? Just to listen to it like Newquay and Bloom, or?
I suppose I like the part coming.
I think at this stage we're still in a very conceptual, still there, and I think the whole point is the next 3 weeks will be key in developing something that will come back to you, that will give you a real idea of what's happening. And I think you're asking all the right questions, but we haven't got there yet. So give us a month, and then hopefully we'll be in a lot better position to answer.
It's actually
Because-
more like the town team setup rather than the Newquay and Bloom, which is completely independent.
Yeah.
This has changed. But the town team has this sort of, because they had to come back to town council and get the money released. So that's why I'm saying we're the accounting body. So
This
it's a
was
much closer relationship.
Initiated by Councillor Thompson this entire.
Yes,
No.
fine.
I'm not.
Let's look at what's on the agenda and what we're voting for. So
So-
we're voting tonight to allow Kieran to carry on with the bid.
Yeah,
So
and
I
that's
can't even remember now if we first, second.
yeah. We've done that.
So the actual climate action group, there was an Instagram today gone out. The RFO has told us that within the next 3 weeks that will be up and sorted, because there's consultants, so there's somebody far, better probably than any of us in the room, who's a consultancy in climate action. He or she will deal with it. I don't know who it is either. But they need to feed into some committee, so that's why I threw in about ENF. So do you believe that it sits with ENF? Are you happy for me to propose that it sits there?
Presuming.
A yes or a no? We don't want
I'm
any
sorry,
explanations.
presuming Councillor Thompson is appointed to support, acknowledged that she is the supporting partner on that. Because she's the technical knowledge behind this.
But Kieran's
Can
the
I-
one that's
Yeah.
making the report.
Just to be really clear. So the membership of it from our perspective hasn't been proposed, decided, anything. So
Well, that's
that
kind of
process
my
is happening.
point.
We can't dictate what a consultant is going to come in
No, but we
and
could
then do. So we need to
recommend
wait for,
that a councillor is a.
not at this stage, we need
Okay,
to wait for the
fine. Well, I
consultant
think that's silly, but.
because we aren't in control of this process. It's a separate organisation.
Control. This is our process.
Can I?
Sorry, I understand what you're trying to do, but it's just the wrong time to do it. And I think it's extremely likely that Sarah will be front and forward in all of this.
Well,
No
it would
one's
be
trying to cut her
totally
out.
ludicrous to not
No one is
include.
trying to cut her out.
Goodness sakes.
Right, Councillor Carson.
Yep, I'll try and keep them brief. So the Mountwise Garages and Gardens, we have had confirmation. It has gone to legal now. I'm currently negotiating with them over the usual things like overages or restrictions on the site. The garages will include the parcel of open space to the footpath, but not including the footpath that runs in the middle of the Mountwise Gardens. And that is to enable us to put forward our plan for the play park. There is a suggestion here that if we're able to secure external funding, in addition to the 50,000 we've already allocated through SIL money, of around about 100,000 plus. If we're able to secure that, we have a project there ready to go. And what we did wonder is if the committee was open to officers pressing forwards with that, if we do secure £100,000 or more external funding without having to come back to committee and losing a month or two, can we just go ahead and start commissioning a designer, commissioning a suitably qualified construction agent, for want of a better phrase, and also to check whether we need planning permission, because we obviously need to check that, and we don't want to incur that cost with pre-app advice unless we've got the money in the bank ready to go. So if members were happy, we would like to do that, but we just wanted to check first before we...
Just ask where you're thinking of putting it, the playground.
So I think the initial idea is that the upper part of the gardens by the road, as opposed to the lower part, which is where a lot of dog walkers use. So yeah.
Great idea.
Anybody like to propose that? Councillor Tweed, second, Councillor Thompson, all in favour?
Can I just ask, because when I was reading the minutes on this, they were talking about you need to have the Mount Wise car park as well, and that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Long term, as part of a town package, they have indicated they are open to talking about some car parks.
Doubt if they're going to talk about the one that makes the second most money in. So what's £1/3 pounds? But it's worth a try.
We're trying. The second one, so moving on to Pentyre, if there's no other questions. So Pentyre, Headland Car Park and Headland, we did submit an expression of interest that has gone to Cornwall Council. They have made a recommendation to their asset delivery group or asset release group. There's a title of it. We don't know what that recommendation is, but the group is due to meet very soon, and then we will hear whether we have been successful to move to the next stage. If they do say yes, we are able to take it on, obviously it's still a council decision. So once you understand whether it includes the headland as well as the car park, and the costs and risks and pluses and minuses with that, you still have the ability to say yes or no at that stage. It's not a right decision made at this stage.
I just ask, have you liaised with Councillor Gardner on this? Because I thought it was a done deal that this was going to be part of the Cornwall Heritage Trust, and that they were taking the they were going to take over the Warren, Pentyre Headland. They're going to take over the Warren amongst other things along the coast, and that they were taking the car park as a fundraiser. And that, I mean, it seems like we're coming in after the game, after this decision has been made. So I suppose the question is, have you spoken to Councillor Gardner about this and sort of just sorted out what exactly is happening?
I haven't directly, but Cornwall Council accidentally informed us that this was almost a done deal. Bearing in mind we'd already put forwards many years ago and renewed that recently, the fact that the Pentyre Headland car park was on our list of devolution that we wished to press forwards with, namely because we've got a toilet sitting smack bang in the middle of them. So it made absolute sense for us to control that, bearing in mind whoever has that car park has a direct influence over the use of our toilet. So accidentally we were told about it. We then brought it to council and got the okay to submit an expression of interest, which was a very quick process that Cornwall Council put in place. So this is where we are. So we're at that stage now. We are up against that other bidder, and I don't know any details of it. I don't know what they've asked for. I know it's 4 sites that they were looking at, but that was also changing as well, as I understand. So again, I don't know what they've bid. I don't know what they've said to Cornwall Council, whether they were going to make it a private car park or not, or changing it in any way. So all I know is we've submitted a bid. They've also submitted a bid, and it may or may not include Pentyre car park.
So when I was on PTA at school, we used to collect linen and stuff for, I think, a similar organisation. So current thinking, basically reading this, it goes to third world. It's sold. The stuff is sold by the ton, like the clothing and stuff, and it's destroyed the clothing industry in like Africa. So in one respect, it is a form of recycling and stuff, but in another, and it gives particularly very often single women jobs with selling stuff, but very often the clothing is inappropriate, dirty clothing which shouldn't be going into there is donated as well. And as I said, it has destroyed the clothing industry in Africa, which there's been huge environmental and economic consequences for that, as you can imagine. So what seems is on the face of some things as a really good thing, actually when you delve down into it, it does have its issues. I would be abstaining from this. From my knowledge and from teaching development at degree level, that I'm just offering that out there, that is an issue. But they've got all these other stuff as well, and I don't know where that's going, so I can't comment on that. I just know that from the clothing side of things.
We have some fantastic charity shops in this town that people donate plenty of most of these items to, whereas I think this is a business rather than a charity. I'd almost rather we just encourage people to donate to the charity shops in the town, so directly giving to charity, whereas if we support this, we're supporting a business which takes percentage before giving to charity, rather than just people donating straight to charity, essentially.
Can I just come in there as well? One of the issues I've heard nationally is that with the with like things like Vinted, then charity shops are short of items. People are preferring to sell stuff themselves and get money that way. So I know there has been a drop-off in input to charity shops. So I'd support Councillor Larson with that and encourage people to go to charity shops for.
Yes, I do. I agree with you and slightly disagree, because there is stuff that the charity shops will not take. And I think that's what it's saying here, but there's no guarantee that, I mean, if you've got a superb fashion dress and you want to get rid of it and you want to take it to a charity shop or put it onto Vinted, if you've got a whole load of blankets which you no longer use, charity shops don't want it. So that sort of thing, there is a real market for old shoes. I mean, if they're saying, I understand dirty clothing, but are they talking about old shoes, old belts? You know, it's what they're collecting is interesting, because the charity shops won't take that.
So the recycling does with your collection. You can, from years ago, it's not, they don't publicise it, they will pick up everything. And it gets sorted and the Salvation Army pick it up. So Dunham Mill, for instance, in Truro, have bins in there, and they'll take all, including pillows, duvets and everything, and it all gets sorted. Some of it then is given back out if it's suitable, and it's all done through the Salvation Army, and they have the means of recycling textiles that goes to make into that, like insulation in cars and stuff. So there is processes for that, and the Cornwall Council will pick up that in a bin bag if you put it separately on your collection. So, but there are people out there that will do that, and of course then
Business, asking that we promote them on our website, and whilst in the big picture it sounds nice, when we look at it, it's actually a business rather than things going straight to charities. And actually I think the charities are more on top of this issue of trying to reduce that over export to Ghana and these other countries that have faced these mountains of clothing waste, whereas a business is slightly less motivated and under spotlight to do that. So I would not be supporting this one myself. Thank you.
I would say that we need to know an awful lot more about them before we actually I mean, it sounds good, but we just don't know enough about it to, at this point. So I will support not going at this stage. I mean, if they want to provide us more detail.
Okay, so I'm happy to propose that we don't do anything at the minute because they're in Exeter, they want to get into Cornwall. Let's see what other parish councils do, because what they have said, and I read that line, charity shops have been inundated. Well, the charity shops are still asking for donations. So I'm happy to propose that we don't do anything at the minute, just watch and wait. Councillor Thompson, second. All in favour? Yep. Is you can see in your packs there's a paper about the car parks. Again, I'll let the clerk, because he was at the meeting, and what his recommendation or what he's asking us to propose.
Yeah, so this was born out of a larger council clerks meeting, led partly by the Mayor of Penzance, and this is where we stumbled upon Cornwall Council's plan to transfer, I think it was up to 30 car parks to one of their arm's length companies, and obviously a number of these car parks were on devolution lists, or they have antisocial behaviour issues built within them, and that effectively exports the problem to what is deemed a private firm who can use ANPR cameras. They were using Little Fistral as the model that they wished to use because it's been fantastic, which obviously officers have pushed very hard back on to say, actually, no, it isn't. The tents that have been there the whole summer have only just been blown away, I think. But people are actually parking there for free now because they obscure their reg numbers as they go through the car park camera. So they're actually making it worse. And now you don't have foot patrols. So we wrote a letter. It went to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee at Cornwall Council. I was on holiday at the time when it went there, although the feedback I've had from clerks is it wasn't really listened to. They didn't answer anything in that letter. The letter is attached to IBABS. And so I think they're pressing forwards with the plan to transfer a number of car parks that we don't know which ones yet, to an arm's length company in order to use ANPR cameras because they don't have the power to do it themselves. And that's the key thing. So it's really noting the letter, so you're all aware of it, and if you wish to do anything about it, whether you want us to write any further letters or press releases, etc.
Councillor Kenny?
I actually sat through listened to the cabinet meeting that discussed this, and it took them something like, I pointed out, 75 minutes before they pointed out that it would not affect any town centre, anything that makes money really, that it wouldn't affect any town centre car parks. So what they appear to be saying is that to me the downside of Town Head is they introduced winter charging, and we got no consultation on that at all. So once those car parks, but we have no idea yet, and it's meant to be coming out this month as to which car parks they are. Now, I suppose we should say anything. Well, if I was a betting person, I would say, but we're online, so I won't say it. I don't think many of the car parks in Newquay, because they make too much money. There are one or two outliers that might. So I think we should wait until we actually see whether any of Newquay car parks are on it. The number they were going up to, and they did at the back of literally the back of an envelope saying, well, if it's 14% of this, it comes to 50. But I don't think it's any of the money-making ones, which are most of ours. So before we do anything, I suggest we wait and see. That list is supposed to be coming out. So my response would be to write back to, is this a letter from Tim Dwelly?
So we wrote it to Tim Dwelly because he chairs that Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
If we could write back and ask, as soon as the list comes out, we would be very keen to see it. And at that point, we will make our comment. If that's sensible. There's no point going in mob-handed now because we don't know whether any of our car parks are. I mean, I think there are only 54 car parks that actually make money. Most of them are in Newquay. So, well, no, not quite as bad as that, but a large percentage of them are in Newquay. There's one very obvious one, I think, which I won't say what I think it is until we finish the meeting, that I think might be a target, but I think most of the others, I mean, you're talking £20,000 a year income, going up to quarter of a million. So they're simply not going to get rid of those.
So the clerk was going to propose that I've got a mayor's meeting. Do you know the date of the mayor's meeting? Oh, next week. At the next mayor's meeting, the 6 mayors that were present, the 6 clerks that were present at that meeting, whether they would sort of write a press release or a letter, you know, alerting to the public that what's happening. So
It's been in the public, and it was in the newspapers, and it was on Cornwall Live, so it has been publicised. But a lot of it was, and I must say our MP got it wrong, you know, he thought they were giving all the car parks away, and that's not what's happening. At least I don't think it is. So I think we really need to wait. I mean, by all means, raise it at the mayor's meeting, but we really need that list to see who is affected by it.
okay.
Yeah, I have to say, I think there's a couple of things on this. One is, and I think you've just alluded to it, Councillor Kenny, that there is a lack of transparency, it feels, on this process. No one really understands what it is they're proposing and how many car parks they're proposing to sign off to this Birmingham-based car parking company. I think for me, there's a couple of real problems. You know, we've already obviously identified a number of issues at South Fistral, Little Fistral car park, sorry. But for us, I think the real problem, and I've had a number of emails in the last couple of weeks myself as mayor, from members of the public, visitors to this town, asking me to help them try and get out of AMPR camera fines. You know, we circled the car park, we couldn't find a parking space, and we left and we got a fine. I think the optics for our town and our county of more of these, and I hate them. I will actively avoid going anywhere near. I mean, there's one at Chester Road, and I would refuse to, you know, park in there because I'm terrified that I'm going to, you know, fall foul of a ticket at some point. And so I think there's an optics point. I think there's a, you know, transparency around the decision, and that feels like a wider issue at Cornwall Council at the minute, and the lack of involvement or just having the, you know, listening to the town council's opinion on these things. These are things that affect us often more than Cornwall Council, and so I mean, I'd be really keen to, you know, highlight the fact that, you know, we have tried to engage in this process with Cornwall Council, and it appears that we have by and large been ignored, not just us but the other 6 or 7 large town councils around Cornwall. I'd be really keen to, you know, to make that really clear in the press that, you know, Newquay Town Council has tried to engage in this, and not least of all, actually the money from those car parks should be invested back in Cornwall, in the towns where they reside, and not to a private corporation outside of Cornwall. And so for all those reasons, I'd be happy to propose that, you know, that at the least as a town council, that, you know, that we're really clear with the public through a press release what we've attempted to do and how we feel that this process has let, you know, us and them down through the lack of transparency and engagement.
Vote against that because I think you have to wait for the list, which is due out, they said early autumn, October. So to go in with a press release before they have produced the list, we could look really stupid if there are no car parks in Newquay affected. Sure. So I think it's the wrong time to make. I think once they produce the list and they say, hey, they're taking Bridge Road or whatever, which is a complete waste of money at the moment. So, I mean, if they were saying something like that, then we would have to look at the car park and say, but to actually go in and say, you're doing something, I mean, I would recommend going to losing an hour and a half of your life and going and listening to the debate wasn't cabinet, it was the scrutiny committee. Yeah. It's worth actually listening to that to see what they've got to say.
Could we amend that then to just delegated authority? Once that is released, we'll ping it around the committee, for, you know, and then send it out. Is that okay?
the utilities EMR release. I'll leave the clerk, 'cause I've totally lost it.
Yeah, so this didn't actually need to come to this committee, it should
No.
go straight to full council, but I think there was confusion over where the utilities EMR sits. That currently sits with the ENF committee, so you have control over that. There's currently about £70,709 in it, and the request or recommendation from committee is to release just over £11,000 from that to deliver as solar panels on the Mount Wise building, and I think that's like highly urgent.
Yeah. Okay. Proposer, seconder, councillor Slade, all in favour? And then we're on to the Newquaytown Council Biodiversity.
Okay, so the biodiversity policy draft is in your pack, and that's some edits based on a number of conversations in ENF. Councillor Kenny, you had questions on what is being done instead of glyphosate, and we, in the last ENF, we passed an action that our officer is getting quotes for the machine to go around the town to do the cleaning in the way that it's actually done through the centre of town, which is done by Cornwall Council. So we've got that, and we also have another quote as a backup for another non-glyphosate possibility if we needed that one instead. So we have multiple methods we're moving forward with to not use glyphosate, and that was really the only catch anyone had any concern with about this policy, and other than the slight wording change you've seen around the difference between synthetic pesticides versus non-synthetic, and that was on the grounds that means that if the committee felt appropriate, we can potentially use the vinegar effort, which I've actually had residents suggest approach, because you can call vinegar a chemical, but it's not a synthetic pesticide, doesn't have the same impacts, the negative impacts that glyphosate is largely believed to have. So asking you to all please approve the policy.
Councillor Lars,
Yes.
I'm actually chairing the meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I thought I was supposed to speak to it. I'm sorry. My apologies.
What we wanted to ask was, Councillor Kelly asked us what was the alternative, and we haven't costed that alternative yet. You
I mean,
haven't
we all got you all saw the bad press. Was it last week or this week?
Right.
There's a scrap going on about, we've got weeds coming up on the pavement, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. It's all Cornwall's town council's fault because of blah, 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 which I don't believe for a moment. But you have to deal with this one you do seem to be coming ahead and saying you're going to do this without actually providing a costed alternative.
So
You've told us a whole string of things you could do, but you haven't actually produced.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
and that's why
My
I know
understanding
that
was
you were
that
going-
ENF manages the costing of environmental and
but
facilities
we-
things.
So shouldn't they
So that
be
was
making
why
that
it was
recommendation?
staying at ENF.
But we can't vote on it if we haven't got the costings. We would
I hadn't
look
realised that was quite what you were.
of the costings for this.
So
go
we
on.
can-
You call it this
Yeah,
grass
no,
scraper.
I think you're quite right. There's been lots of, or there has been some, not lots, I would say there's some noise from a select couple of individuals.
Suggest it's political in any way.
No, not at all. I mean, God forbid. I mean, look at the last page of the corporate plan. What was the last thing it says on the corporate plan on page whatever it is about not being political? I think let's just put this in the context of the reason why we're looking at a biodiversity plan. We all know we're in a biodiversity crisis across the globe, particularly here in the UK. And so, what we need to be doing is trying to protect habitats, as my son eloquently told me yesterday. And, and I think I appreciate there's been lots of back and forth, and this has been a bit of a political hot potato over this year. what we can say is that glyphosate hasn't been sprayed en masse across the road networks in Newquay, where the road meets the curb. That has resulted in some vegetation growth for sure, but it has also resulted in, interesting, I saw a report from Cornwall Council the other day noting the increase in biodiversity this year that they put down to another reason. But I think that's the point of stop spraying glyphosate. It's about the increase in biodiversity. That's what this policy inherently is all about. Your concerns, Councillor Kenny, and a number of members of the public and other councillors, is about the vegetation growth and how are we going to manage that. And I think there's two things about that. So firstly, and this goes back obviously, as you know, many years when Cornwall Council asked councils to do this particular work, presumably because they didn't want to be spraying glyphosate. But
They didn't want to pay for it.
well, I mean, at the time they were also giving money to the town council to do it. So, and obviously that has weaned off over the years. Cornwall Council do have a policy of not using glyphosate now, and that actively tell their contractors not to use it. So Biffa are the ones that do the centre of Newquay, and they don't use it, I understand. They're largely manual or machine. The issue, I think there's a couple of issues around the fact that we are proactively spraying the road network that is the responsibility of another body. You can question whether that's a double taxation, as Councillor Slade often likes to say. I think the simplest way of dealing with this is to push it back to Cornwall Council, which is what we've done from next year. And for this year, what was agreed at ENF is that we have delegated up to the annual weed control budget for the officer to spend on the road sweeper to clear the vegetation at the edge of the roads around Newquay. And my understanding is we're all making some progress on that. We haven't yet finalised who the contractor will be and when they were going to do it, but they are on it. I am more than happy to defer this particular policy to the November meeting, where I hope by then we will have appointed a contractor. They will have achieved some of that work, and then we can, hopefully we can discuss how well or not well that's worked. And let's be honest, it is a bit up in the air. We're not sure how well it'll work or not really. But the over and under on it, I suppose, is that next year we've passed it back to Cornwall Council on the basis that there is no cost-effective alternative to the town council to proactively manage the roads, and actually it's not our asset, therefore why should we?
I don't have an up-to-date. I know they were working on it. I know they were talking to the officers that have the kit and things like that. So they were getting quotes, but I don't know where they are with it or whether they've actually physically had quotes yet.
Yeah, just on the sort of scale of all this, the thing that it's like it's a whole policy of the way that we promote biodiversity in everything that we do, and the whole thing's got hung up on this, like, well, how are you actually going to get rid of the weeds for Cornwall Council down the curbs? Yeah. And we've said, well, we're not going to do it with the synthetic pesticide. And everyone's like, well, what are you going to do? How much is it going to cost? Is that actually part of the policy? The policy is just to say, we're not going to use synthetic pesticides when we control weeds, and we are not going to. So does it matter who or what, right down to the minutiae of ENF giving out this contract or that contract? The policy is, we're going to promote biodiversity, and as a town council, we're not going to use synthetic pesticides. Pesticides? Pesticides is herbicides, fungicides, and insecticides. Okay, just chemicals that kill things.
And then it's up to
But like,
to
I mean,
manage
really,
things in
I
other
don't
ways,
quite
as we already
understand why
do.
the minutiae of contracts and little details are part of the whole policy, when the policy is just to say we're not going to use. I don't know. I mean,
What we wanted to know was what was the costing of, the van, or the brush sweeper that goes round, because he seems to clear it. So if we could get a costing of that so that we could.
Well, that's up to £7,000 that we've
Okay.
agreed it.
We've already agreed the 7,000
Up to
in the
7,000 the budget.
environment. It's Environment Committee's responsibility, facilities responsibility to do that.
I mean,
So again, I think you're right. I think we have delegated that up to that spend, you know, and the officers will work on that, and I guess we'll wait and see how it works, and I'm hopeful that it will be successful. I don't think there's any harm in deferring this to November to await, see what happens. I mean, regardless, as I say, we're not going to be doing any spraying next year anyway. But I think there's a wider issue here, isn't there, about Cornwall Council's management or lack therein of its verges and its pathways. And I note that in some of the social media coverage, we had a couple of councillors stood in front of some rather heavily vegetated areas, which happened to be Cornwall Council's responsibility in the first place. So a bit of an own goal there, I thought. But and I think what we need to do as a town council is really look at whether and how we support our residents in making the town look more kept and managed. It's not about the length of grass, it's not about how much vegetation, it's about, does it look kept, does it look tidy, or does it look like it's just been left to go to some sort of end of the world apocalyptic movie? So and that kind of, I guess that's the frustration at the moment. It's not about necessarily about vegetation on the roads or glyphosate, it's about the lack of action by those who are responsible, by residents who quite rightly pay their council tax and expect something to be done. And I think there's something we can do there.
There are plenty of alternatives, and this policy is not about deciding the alternative. This policy is saying that we will explore those other alternatives, and if we try different ones over the years, then that's what councils do in their environment teams. This policy is not to define the alternative. I just want to make that clear. We will let you know what we're going to do, but that will not be what the policy is. The policy is merely that we're not going to use hazardous approaches. It's not saying what non-hazardous approaches we will use, because we want to be sensible that we would use the most cost-effective at the time, or the most modern. There are new methods coming through all the time, and I think you need to understand that, Councillor Kenny. Well, we've done that.
to just move things forward then, basically, this committee is basically sort of, it seems to me, steering the idea that, like, for whatever reason, they want to know the ins and outs of how we're getting rid of the weeds without glyphosate. And so therefore we're going to push it forward to November, when then everyone is happy and then the thing can go through. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, and I'm happy to propose we defer it to November's
just to
meeting.
get it going forward.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll second that then.
Not use it. IBABS has taken me totally out. Sorry, all in favour? So, next item is, anybody tell me?
Review of risk assessment, I think.
So there's two risk assessments on the agenda. The changes are highlighted as track changes. So on the first one, which is the financial risk assessment, I believe, if this works, on page 8, right at the bottom, we have a new entry, which is the 2024-25 budget setting. And this is purely around the delays that we've had as a result of the server failure, which members will hear later. And also, we understand that Cornwall Council's second tax on, it's the doubling of council tax on second homes, may have a complication on how we calculate the precept. We have heard, so I've attended a meeting with a clerk from up north where this has already been rolled out. And it was fantastic in the first year because they reduced their precept to have that windfall, lovely income that they had from the second homes. Then everyone sold the second homes. So the second year, they had a massive increase in their precept to catch back up. And obviously, if capping comes in and all that lovely stuff, we wouldn't be able to do that. So their strong recommendation, and I'm going to try and make sure we get some feedback from some of these affected areas, is to effectively use that windfall to do things that you are not reliant on, or to top up reserves. So you don't rely on it, but you still use it effectively. And well, we get a proportion of it, yes. So this is where it's going to get complicated with the way they calculate the base rate, because we're hoping they'll split it out, but I'm fully expecting they won't. So we will have to look at what we did last year and what previous years were, and then calculate it that way. So that's just a risk that we've entered in there. I think it's reasonable. So that was the first document, which ideally needs recommended to full council. But while I'm talking, the second document has just some tweaks to it. Again, track changes. So we've put a similar line in there about the base rate, about the changes to the base rate affecting how we budget set. And also on the final page, the top of the final page, obviously we've commissioned a 4x4 now, so that resolves that other risk. So we just wanted to ensure that was in there to say from December 2024, it will help mitigate that risk slightly. So those are the changes, and if members are happy, it's recommending them to full council.
Councillor Kenny.
You're happy with the changes? Are we also putting failure of the server as a risk in its own right? Because it happened.
On the first one, so the second one is the service level strategic. The first one is the financial risk assessment. So we've put it in the first one because it's obviously more of an impact on finances, whether it's paying to sort it out or actually losing access to your finances. So yeah, I shouldn't joke or laugh.
Sorry, do I get to ask a question? Sorry. Is there somewhere, maybe I'm missing it, sorry. On increased storms with climate change.
Yes.
I'm trying to find it.
Severe weather impacting on service division.
I guess service delivery and our properties, do we mean by service delivery that it would also... It does say, sorry, I couldn't find it. Okay.
The top of the last page on the second one, so
Assets
the
covers
service risk
everything, though,
assessment.
essentially.
Covers
Okay.
everything.
Thank you, my apologies. Thank you. Okay, so yes, I support that. Sorry, my apologies. Thanks.
And then we're on to item 14B. Did we approve that? Yeah,
Yes, we've all voted. Yeah. Governance statement.
The conclusion of audit. So we've got a lovely clean audit again. Thank you to Anne really for answering some queries and to actually deliver the audit. And so really it's for members to note and forward this to full council for formal noting. It's well done.
The audit from the external.
Yes,
Yeah.
the big one, the one that's very important.
Happy to propose.
I'll second.
Councillor Creek, all in favour?